All right. Hello, Austin County. Today we are here with Lieutenant Don Darracq from the Austin County Sheriff's Department, and we're so happy you're here today with us.
Well, hi, Shelley. Thank you for having me.
Well, we are looking forward to learning a lot of things. Just in talking to you, visiting with you a little bit, I learned a few things I didn't know, and I'm kind of excited. I don't know that everybody in Austin County does know. But we are going to start with, the generic questions. Have you always lived in Austin County?
No. Actually, I'm a relatively speaking new resident here in Austin County. My wife and I have lived here for about 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Prior to that, we lived in Harris County. I actually worked for the Harris County Sheriff's Office for 27 years.
But that was
During that time, we kind of bounced all around Harris County, Fort Bend County, Galveston County. But I finally landed here in Austin, and I'm glad to be here.
I was going to say, I bet working in Harris County when you came here to Austin County, was it a huge slowdown?
It was a huge slowdown and a great relief.
I can only imagine. Well, I have great respect for police officers. I have family members that are officers. So what, inspired you to be?
Oh, goodness. Great question. As far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a police officer, and I can't tell you one specific spark or point in my life where I woke up and said, I'm going to be a police officer. It seems that that's always what I wanted to do. And it actually started earlier on in the military. I was actually military police. So that kind of was a springboard to my civilian police career.
All right. So what branch of the military were you in?
Navy.
In the Navy. Well, thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
I have great respect, again, for people who do law enforcement and the military. I couldn't do it, no matter what it was.
We appreciate that.
Well, all right. So you were just a regular officer in Harris County and stuff?
Yes, deputy.
Deputy.
I worked within the jail for about the first 5 years, and shortly after that, I went into a specialized area.
Okay.
Where I dealt with inmate complaints, so I did some investigations on that. Then I went into inmate disciplinary.
Okay.
Where that's not as draconian as it sounds. It's just basically reading offense reports and assigning administrative punishment to the inmates, such as, okay, you lose your visitation or you don't get commissary for a week, things of that nature. And shortly thereafter, I got drafted into the business side of the Harris County Sheriff's Office, particularly a grant writer. And throughout my time, I was able to get probably about $55,000 in federal and state grants for the Sheriff's Office.
Okay, now
I'm sorry, 55 million, not thousand.
Whoa.
55 million.
That's way more impressive. Okay, so I guess it's kind of a dumb question, but a sheriff and a police officer are different. What extra did you have to do to become a sheriff?
Nothing really. It's basically jurisdiction.
Oh, okay.
The sheriff is in charge of a county.
Okay.
Whereas a police officer has their authority within a municipality. So we have, for example, we have the Belleville Police Department responsible for the area of Belleville. Okay. Then the Austin County Sheriff's Office, who is they're responsible for the larger county in which Belleville resides.
Gotcha. Okay, so you've got, I'm going to flip my little PowerPoint here. We've got a bunch of great people that you work with.
Absolutely.
And you said that's not nearly all of them.
Oh, no, that's just a small portion of the wonderful people that work for Austin County.
All right. So with these people and with everything you do, what is a quote unquote like typical day in the sheriff's office?
Well, my typical day is much different than most typical days. My typical day would be basically balancing the sheriff's office checkbook. One of my main responsibilities is paying the bills for the sheriff's office. Okay. But I also do a lot of work with contracts and memorandums of understanding. There's a lot of intricacies that go into running a law enforcement agency that a lot of people can't even realize.
Right.
They want to, I tell people I'm a police officer and they say narcotics, homicide. No, I pay the bills.
Administrative.
I'm administrative. I pay the bills, and that kind of ends the conversation right there.
Well, I was going to say, but that's that old thing about everybody has their idea. Like you said, he's like, he's got a badge and he totes a gun. How many bad guys have you caught? And
exactly.
I guess yours is not really bad guys. Yours are bad numbers.
It's bad numbers. The job has to be done, and by the grace of God, I'm fairly good at doing it.
Well, that's good. And I tell you what, if I was your wife, I'd be much happier knowing you were there than out in the field.
Absolutely.
But another one that I like is I love this one because like when we talked to Chief Smalley from Belleville, he talked about how, they did a lot of outreach and stuff. And I know this particular picture, I snaked it from your Facebook page. And this was the Belleville Honor Society that brought you guys some treats. And it always makes me happy because a lot of times you say police officer, sheriff, and everybody goes, oh, and it's good to see that you have kids that are
absolutely,
coming to see. Do y'all have a lot of visitors?
We do. And of course, Sheriff Brandis, and for those who don't know Sheriff Brandis, he's a gentleman
he's
in
this
the
gentleman
center.
right here.
Yes. Sheriff Brandis, I must admit, I've worked for a lot of leaders over my career. Sheriff Brandis is actually one of the nicest, finest men I've had the pleasure of ever working for.
That's good.
He's incredibly interested in reaching out to the community. That's very important to him. In fact, he established what we now call the community outreach program, or I believe it's called the community outreach. It's actually deputies that go out into the community and teach the community about being a police officer. It's an invaluable program.
And see, I think that's wonderful because everybody who's watched the show knows that I was a school teacher. And sadly, most children and young adults have negative contact with police. And that's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy. We want the public to know that the police and sheriff's officers, we're here to help them when they need help.
Right. And unfortunately, if you do break the law or do something that needs correction, I mean, you do come face to face with it. But people have this idea that, they're out to get me. And that's not it.
Not at all. Absolutely.
Y'all are there. Okay. Now, here we go into the exciting part that I did not know. You are a hostage negotiator, I'm told.
I am.
Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. I thought hostage negotiators were only in, the big cities, New York, and, we got people standing on the top of the building and I'm going to jump off and whatever. But tell me about it. How did you get involved in it?
Let me begin by drawing a distinction.
Okay.
The term hostage negotiator is actually slightly antiquated, and I'll explain why in a second. We're really considered crisis negotiators.
Okay.
Because we run into far more instances of crisis than we do traditional hostage takers. And if I can circle back to the difference between those two here in a minute, I will. But how I got involved, I was approached by, I believe he is now Chief Matt Walls. At the time, he was Lieutenant Matt Walls. And I was asked if I would be interested in being a hostage/crisis negotiator. And the idea appealed greatly to me.
Okay.
The training is quite a bit.
Okay.
But I was able to complete the training, and I became, it's not really a certification, but it's a state recognition.
Okay.
As a crisis negotiator. And the rest is history.
Okay. And so you talked about the training. You said it was extensive. Is it like years, or do you have to take tests?
It's not years. It's a 3-phase process. Phase 1 and 2 are actually taught as one, and then there's phase 3. I also went to what's called the FBI's Regional Crisis Negotiation Seminar.
Right.
There are tests that have to be taken. So there's a lot of information, a lot of practical hands-on things that you have to do to make sure that you have the skills that you need.
Right. Yeah. Cause that's I guess it's kind of one of those things, if you would do it wrong, you could have not very positive outcomes.
If you follow the guidelines that are established, I have found that the outcome can be extremis positive.
Okay.
Extremely positive.
All right. Well, I guess the next thing is, like you said, it's mostly crisis negotiation give me an example. I mean, obviously you can't say names or anything, but.
No, but and thank you for bringing that back up, because allow me to draw a distinction real quick. There are 2 types of situations in which captives can be involved.
Okay.
The first one is the traditional hostage situation. Take, for example, a bank robbery gone bad. Okay. The bank robber says, oh boy, the cops are here. Everyone in the bank, I'm now holding you, and I'm going to use you to negotiate my way out of here. I'm going to ask for $747 and, $1 gazillion in cash.
Right.
What he's doing is he's using the captives as instrumentalities for his release.
Okay.
The far more prevalent problem is when we run into what's called a victim barricade situation.
Wait, say it again. What?
Victim barricade situation.
Victim barricade. Okay.
Let's say that you come home, and I'll use a male, for example, because it tends to be males. You come home and your wife says, I want a divorce. I'm taking the kids. I've drained the bank account. Well, all these things are hitting you at once, and your emotional state becomes overwhelmed. And when your emotional state becomes overwhelmed, you lose the ability to think rationally.
Right.
You revert to basically thinking with your animal brain, fight or flight. So you start yelling and screaming. Well, the neighbors hear this and they call the police. The police show up. Well, now that compounds the situation that you're in. So now you are thinking about as irrationally as you can. So your response is, lock the doors. None of you are going anywhere until I can figure this out.
Right.
Well, these are highly volatile situations because the concern is if this person is allowed to continue to spiral out of control, there could be he could hurt the people that are in the house with him because he has a direct emotional connection with these people.
Right.
The crisis negotiator attempts to start a dialogue with this person.
Okay.
Now, we prefer to do it over a telephone. That's not always possible. Sometimes a loudspeaker. But the steps that I mentioned earlier are very important. The initial step of the process is what's called active listening skills. Active listening is when I get you to continue an open dialogue with me. And it can start as anything. Hey, how do you think? Talk to me about baseball. I know you like baseball. You're doing anything you can to start a dialogue. As that dialogue continues, you slowly start to move into the dialogue that talks about the current situation.
Right.
Hey, Jim, how did we get to where we are today? You want him to start talking to you about what happened because what's he doing? He's decompressing.
Right.
He's talking about what's on his mind, and he's venting, and he's slowly starting to decompress. We're talking about a stairway of evolution here that's actually called the behavioral change stairway. So we have active listening. We're listening. The next step is empathy. We let him know, hey, Jim, I understand.
Right.
I care about what's going on with you. This is important. Tell me more. So we have the empathy. Now we move to establishing a rapport, the third step. Rapport, you're starting to get a trust factor built up between the two of you.
Right.
So, and again, all these steps are moving dynamically.
Right.
They could be happening very quickly. They could be happening slowly. As the negotiator, you just kind of have to feel at what points you are. After rapport, now we can start doing what's called influencing. Now we can slowly start making suggestions like, hey, Jim, your wife, wouldn't it be better if maybe you just let your wife come outside and then you and I can concentrate on helping, resolve the rest of this problem. And that's just an example.
Right.
But now you've got influence over the man. The very last step is behavioral change. Now you've got influence. Now you can start affecting his behavior. Jim, we've talked about this for a while. I can tell you feel better.
Right.
Why don't you come to the door and talk to me? Or why don't you come out? If you come out, I promise it'll just be me there, and so on and so forth. And the whole process is designed to de-escalate his current tension, get him to start thinking rationally again,
Right.
and then walk outside.
So let me see if I understand it. The idea is that, okay, Jim is very upset. Potentially, if Jim keeps going, violence could ensue.
Exactly.
But your idea here, or the idea here, is that you basically talk him down. The other thing about talk him down off the ledge.
That in essence is exactly what this is. This is a more structured, spelled out technique in how to do that. I have used this technique personally, and it works.
I was to say, and then what's bad too is a lot of times you understand that these are not bad people. This is not, Jim is not the kind that, he may be a deacon in the church, but like you said, this was the last straw.
Absolutely. And that's important to point out. These aren't necessarily bad people.
Right.
These are people who are thrust into bad situations.
Yeah.
That because of the speed and severity of the situation, it literally crashes their ability to digest what's going on.
Right. And well, we've all felt like that before.
Yes.
And that's, I guess everybody handles it a little differently. Me personally, I cry, that's my big thing. So when you, at least around here, most of the time when you're called out, you are the supporting role. You are just the, hey, let me get you out, and then we turn you over to the mental health or the police or whatever else needs to happen.
Exactly. And, there's always a tactical presence on standby because you never know where the situation is going to go. So we work very closely with the regional SRT team.
I was going to show you, here's your...
Yep.
Here's your team.
Now, if you go back to the vehicle,
okay,
right there on the passenger side of that vehicle is actually where myself or one of my team members, one of the crisis negotiators, would be sitting.
Okay. And I guess because I watch too much TV, but like when you go up there, are you all bulletproof vested and all that stuff?
We do wear vests.
Okay.
But that's just a standard safety.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I know it's standard. I didn't know if you maybe need to put on a little extra just in case, or do you? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't know. And then
do you stay permission in the car, or do you get out? I mean, do you stay in there and talk to them from there, or
we stay in there, and that's basic. That's a requirement of the SRT team. We stay behind armor until the scene is considered safe.
Okay.
Right.
And that's the thing. And that's, you see the guys here, and basically you don't want it to get to this point. You're to talk her down until, and then if that doesn't work, then unfortunately you have to go.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because prior to about 1973, the solution for hostage situations or crisis situations, basically laying siege to the building. And
right.
As you can imagine,
that went well.
Did not go well.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know you said that.
Sarcastically, yeah.
In 73, it actually started with the New York Police Department. They had the idea, well, what if we just try talking to these people a little bit more and see if we can, de-escalate the situation? Well, it worked.
Right.
And the FBI picked up on it. And they actually enhanced the program. And the FBI is the ones that actually created the behavioral staircase that I spoke of earlier.
Okay.
So it started from humble beginnings, but it's really come up, full circle, and we've got a really well-established program.
I was to say, it's funny because teachers are hostage negotiators.
Absolutely.
I would say it sounds like there's quite a bit of psychology in this.
There is psychology, and having an understanding of the person that you're dealing with is incredibly important. One of the best team to have for negotiation is the negotiator, the person who's speaking to them. Then you have a coach. The coach is the one that's silently listening, passing notes to the negotiator saying, ask this, talk about this.
So it's a team effort.
And then there's a third person who actually tries to glean intelligence on this person.
Okay.
Now, I am very fortunate. I'm just going to say it. My wife is actually very instrumental in doing deep dive research on people in these situations. So she feeds me the intelligence that I need to do this job. And then she does that just on her own, just to help.
Right.
So
I was going to say too, I guess it does help because there's a big difference between me, who's had a really bad day and is, close to hysterics, and somebody who is, unfortunately, say a war veteran who has PTSD and, drug problems and things like that. You're talking about two different flavors of negotiation there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We deal with people that have psychosis. We deal with people that have antisocial personality disorders. Actually, that's very prevalent, antisocial personality disorders, such as, narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy. And you have to know how to talk to these people.
I guess one of the things I was wondering, I don't know if you could say it or not. When do you know, when is the switch? When do you know, okay, it's not working?
Has failed.
Yeah, at what point do the guys empty the vehicle?
That's a great question.
Or do you just wait a little while? Or do okay, we're good, we can go longer? You know what I mean?
One of the jobs of the team commander, who is the person in charge of the overall operation, tactical and hostage negotiation, a lot of times, well, most of the time, they will stay in touch with my team saying, okay, where's it going? Is this going to work? Where are we? How are we? The final decision to actually institute a tactical operation would fall to the tactical team leader. And it's never happened here in Austin County, but there are instances where a tactical operation will commence while the negotiator's still negotiating. The negotiator may not even be aware that they're about to launch a tactical operation. That's an example that has not happened here in Austin County, but
that's kind of bad, though, for you, isn't it? Or I say you, the negotiator. Let's use that term better.
I don't know if bad's the right term. We have to look at every option that we have to remedy the situation as quickly as possible. If it's looking like, despite our best efforts, that this person is just not wanting to listen,
Right.
they may have to use an alternative method to end the situation.
I was just saying, I think that would be the whole team part, like the person who's your tactical person. It's, is because I know they do things like you said, get intelligence on the person and whatever. Perhaps they know, this is a neighborhood full of this type of person, or, or there's a bunch of old people, or there's a school near, or whatever, and they're looking at all of this to make that decision. Mm-hmm. I would think,
Absolutely.
in my non-professional opinion, but that's what I would think.
It's very true.
It would be. Okay, so we kind of talked about that, but all right, like walk us through, Jim, you've gotten the call, Jim's barricaded in the house, wife is sobbing on the couch and whatever. When you get there, what is the first thing that you do? Do you try to call him? Do you bullhorn? Do you?
The first thing we do when we get there is we assess, is this something that needs an immediate tactical response?
Okay.
If we pull up and there are bombs and guns going off,
right,
I'm not going to try to negotiate.
Right.
Now, if we pull up and the situation is seemingly contained in the house, the first thing we try to do is contact Jim.
Okay.
Now, we might be able to glean like a cell phone number from neighbors or family.
Okay.
So we try to do that. If not, we will get on the loudspeaker, call his name out. We might try to toss a cell phone into him and say, Jim, I'm tossing the phone in. When it rings, please answer.
Okay.
So, I will introduce myself. Hey, Jim, my name's Don. I'm with the police outside. Can you tell me how we got to where we got? Hopefully what I'm looking for is for him to engage conversation with me about anything. Anything. I don't care what it is.
Even if he tells you to stuff it, that's at least...
He's talking to me.
That's okay.
He's talking to me. Not what I want to hear, but...
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But that's the thing, is at least he's spoken to you.
Yep.
Okay.
And once...
So the worst thing is silence.
Worst thing is silence.
Okay.
Right.
Absolutely. I would rather, and I know I can't use obscenity, but I would rather have him use obscenities towards me and tell me to leave. That's better than nothing.
Yeah, because when you got nothing, you don't know what's going on.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And we've had situations where it took a while for them to respond back to us. I had one situation where we knew there was another person in the house, and he was not responding. So I just got on the loudspeaker and I told him, "Hey, so and so, I'm going to call your cell phone. It's me. Please answer it." And he answered it, and it turned out that the poor man had just had surgery and he was in his bed and he didn't know what to do. So I asked him. I said, "Can you, do you have a wheelchair? Can you get to your wheelchair?" He said, "Well, yeah, but it might take me a minute." I said, "Take your time, get in your wheelchair, stay on the phone, talk to me, tell me what's going on with your progress." So we finally just got him to come out in his wheelchair. We took him off to the side where he was safe, and we continued with our business.
Wow, that's...
Yeah. But moving on to what you said, we establish, as I discussed earlier, the behavioral staircase.
Right.
We work our way up until we can affect some type of behavioral change.
Okay. And the thing is that have, I guess, things, I don't exactly know how to say it, but like if it's like two adults, you proceed differently than if it was an adult and a child, or like a teenager or something. So if it's like, hi,
So basically, is it strictly a numbers game, or does the age make a difference?
Yeah. Is it like, if you have one person, with three people in the house, or if it was like a mother and a child, and she's got postpartum and she's like, I've got this infant and, and my 2-year-old, and they're driving me crazy and I'm going to do something stupid. is it more urgent then that if it would be like, say, Greg and I were having a spat and, you know.
I guess it goes, I guess the question is, how do you get your assessment?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. That's what I want.
Situation always drives response.
Okay.
That's very important. If we get there, and we'll use your mother postpartum, when losing her mind type thing. If there are 2 children, we would argue for both children.
Okay.
We would argue to get both children out. We'll take what we can get, but we will argue for both children. And one of the reasons for that is, let's say the baby is out. Well, now the mother's sole attention is on the younger daughter or
younger child.
We don't want to leave that child behind.
Right.
So we're gonna argue to get both children out simultaneously.
But it would be the thing of, okay, I know the baby's driving you crazy. Let us have the baby and we'll calm it down and whatever, and then you know, something like that.
If it's just, are you saying if it's just
like if it was 2 of them, you know, you could say, hey Mom, let us relieve you of the baby for a little bit, and, you know, let you kind of get yourself together, and then, oh, by the way, we'll take the 2-year-old too.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Again, situation drives response. Okay. I would still probably say we would argue to get both children.
Okay. Yeah. So the biggest thing is you want both for sure.
We need to know, one of the things we try to figure out is, if there's more than one person in that house, are one of those two people
right.
a driving force of the current problem?
Okay.
And if they're not, then they're just basically innocent bystanders.
Okay.
Which actually buys us some time.
Okay.
If one of the people in the house is a contributing factor to the problem itself, then yeah, we need to know that, and we need to try to get that person out as quick as possible.
Okay.
Because that's just fueled with fire.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, so you've done several things now. You've only been a negotiator here in Austin County, or did you negotiate somewhere else too?
This type of negotiation, only Austin County.
Okay.
Business negotiation, I've been doing my entire life.
Well, I was gonna. That makes
the two sometimes abet each other.
Hey, you know what? So in the negotiations that you've done, have you had one that's really stuck out as either very hard, heartbreaking, exciting, like, yay, we did it?
Heartbreaking, no.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to know. We don't like heartbreaking, but
probably my first successful, we call them walkouts when they decide on their own to walk out. Probably my first successful successful talk out was probably one that stands out. Another one was really kind of interesting. I took vacation, and unbeknownst to me, so did my partner.
Oh no.
So there were no negotiators available. Now, mind you, this was early on. We now have a team of 4.
Right.
But we get the call that there's a lady held up that doesn't want to come out. And she made noises about wanting to hurt herself. So I am not going to say exactly where I was, but I was far, far, far away from Austin County. And my other negotiator was far, far, far away. We actually called on each other's cell phones, did a party line, called the woman, and successfully talked her out.
Wow.
From probably a total of 500 to 600 miles of separation between all of us.
Now that's impressive.
Yeah. And she walked out.
That's very impressive. I like it. I was going to say, do you mostly have, which I know you probably haven't had that many, but is it mostly like one person saying, I'm going to hurt myself, or is it usually 2 people? What's the biggest? I mean, if you had to do percentages, like about half and half, maybe not quite.
And I'm trying to recall. The ones that we have dealt with have basically mostly been just one person.
Okay.
With I'm going to kill myself.
Right.
And we've been able to. There was one, I believe it was my partner did the negotiation on that, where the house was full of people. And she actually got him, and he was threatening these people. She actually convinced him to walk out. She did a great job.
Good deal. Yeah. I just wondered, because I would think that mostly it would be the stress, like more than one person. That would, to me, would be the bigger cause of, something like that.
A lot of times we have situations where the person that caused the stress left.
Oh, okay.
And left that person in the house just stewing in their own juices.
Gotcha. Okay. Kind of like when I make my husband mad. Is that what you're trying to say? Okay. So we talked about, you had all kind of different things, and you have to assess the situation. Like, how do you mentally prepare? Are you like, okay, call on everything I know, take deep breaths, say a prayer? I mean, anything like that?
Breathing is very important. The way I personally mentally prepare is I think in my mind, I take everything I know about the current situation. In my mind, I say, what is the first thing I'm going to say to this person? Once I have that figured out, everything else seems to fall into place.
Okay, so
because what you don't want to do is you don't want to go up and say, how you doing?
Right.
Well, obviously he or she are not doing well.
Right.
So that's it's kind of the
wrong thing to say.
Yeah, it's patronizing a little bit there.
I was going to say that too would be, I would think, because I tend to be more of a high-strung personality. And after a while of asking somebody, let's talk about it, please come out. I mean, you have to be very calm, because I'd be tempted to shout at them, stop being stupid and come out,
There's actually a little, have you ever heard of a British actor by the name of Benny Hill? Benny Hill, thank you. There's actually a small skit that he does that discusses that.
Oh, really? I haven't seen.
They keep using active listening skills on him, and he finally blows up, and he's basically like, are you stupid or something? Can't you hear what I'm telling you? So you have to be very careful when using your skill set. You want to make sure that you don't exasperate somebody.
Right.
Because it could do that. They're like, aren't you listening to me?
Right. It's like, I want to do this, and you're saying, no, don't do it. And you're like, but I want to do it. And then, no, okay, yeah. And so so you've had your negotiation, high stress, you got everybody out and everything. What do you do after that? Breathe a sigh of relief, get a beer?
Well, we always breathe a sigh of relief. The tactical teams do a debriefing, and we discuss everything that happened during the mission. A lot of times the negotiators will discuss among themselves how well things went. Really it sounds weird saying this, being a police officer as long as I have been, the successful mission is enough of a catharsis for me.
Right.
That's really all it takes for me.
Okay. Then, of course, we have to ask the age-old question. What do people get wrong about negotiation? You see it on TV, and you see it in the movies and all kind of stuff, and how I know it's...
Everything. Voice inflection.
Okay.
Trying to get from point A to point B too quickly, not building up that rapport. Trying to convince them, just come out, without trying to establish that trust relationship. Those are a lot of the things. Most of what you see on TV is just that. It's TV.
Yeah.
The negotiator pulls up and he says, okay, stop all this foolishness, just come out.
Right.
It's not realistic.
I was going to say, and two, I would think, and maybe I'm wrong, tone of your voice, the things you say, the rate at which you say it, all of these things can have profound impacts on the negotiation.
Absolutely. If you don't have genuine empathy in your voice, that could have a problem. That could cause a problem. If you have too much empathy in your voice, the person could think that you're treating them like a child. So you have to be extremely careful. And again, as the situation develops, you're learning a lot right on the spot about how you have to respond to this person.
Right. And I
was going to say,
ahead, sorry.
I'm over here smiling on the side. So what, in your opinion, have you seen is Hollywood's worst representation of negotiation?
I don't remember the movie, but it was an English. It was not an English movie. The actor was English, and he basically walked up, got on the phone, and said, "Come out, or I'm coming in." Then he put on a motorcycle helmet and ran through the side of a brick building. So yeah, that was about the worst negotiations I've ever seen.
Could just see you doing that. I was going to say, but I would think you would need to even match their rate of speech and things like that. If they're talking rapid fire, that maybe you would respond back. Because some people, like I said, I know again from being kids, but sometimes if you try to quote unquote speak their language and things like that, it helps. Like if they're exuding high energy, if you exude a little bit lower, energy, or if they're very low, if you put a little bit of high energy into it to kind of offset what they're doing. Is that?
I agree with that 100%. If someone is speaking too quick or maybe having flights of thought or something like that, My tone can help establish a more calm tone for them. Now, if they're already speaking kind of in a calm tone, we kind of want to maintain that.
Right.
We don't want to do anything that might cause them to start revving their engines up.
Yeah. It sounds terrible, but that's really the biggest thing is once you've kind of got them on the downhill slide, you don't want to do. Now, that's another question. Okay, so you've got, Bob, and he's looking good. Bob's looking like he's going to come out. And then all of a sudden, Bob's like, now, wait a minute. I've decided I'm not coming out. What do we do with Bob?
We had something like that.
Okay.
I'm not going to say where it was, of course, but we were so close to this young man walking out. He opened the door, and he saw the pre-staged tactical team in their positions. Well, he slammed the door and went back inside. So we had to start from ground zero, work our way back up. And what I basically did is I asked the team commander if he could move the tactical units back a little bit to make the person in the house feel a little more comfortable. He did move them back without causing any danger to anybody. Right. I reestablished trust, and he did eventually come out.
Now, what is the longest that you've had a negotiation?
That's a great question. We have not had really long negotiations.
Okay.
When you're talking about a victim barricade, the one that's based off of emotional,
right.
If you can get them talking and diffuse the situation, you'd be surprised how quick they might be willing to come out. They really don't want to be there.
Right.
Now, if you're involved in a traditional hostage situation, it could take forever. We've not had one of those in Austin County, thank goodness.
That's good. Yeah, because, again, TV, that's the bane of everybody's existence, but they show them, hour 14, 15, 24 hours, and they're still talking, and, and they do, of course, you're different, but the whole, I want a 747 and I want a police escort, and then I want, Van Halen to play when I land, in Budapest with my, Malaysian girlfriend and whatever. And that always kind of makes me laugh. It's like, really?
In the traditional hostage situation, a lot of times the hostage taker understands that he's never going to get these ridiculous things. A lot of times he or she, they're just wasting time.
Right.
They're just wasting time. What they're really looking for is any possible way for them to escape.
Right. I was going to say, have you had anybody that, had an issue and that whole thing about all they wanted was a hug? You get them out and they're just, I don't know any other way to say it. They just have had a bad day and they're just like, I just need a hug. And they don't.
Are you asking me if I would hug them? No, I'm not.
No, but you know what I mean?
I don't think I would hug them.
No, but you know what I mean? They're the kind of like, I guess, pitiful ones that don't have any friends, and they've called and said, I'm going to do something, so somebody comes out and visits them.
I see what you're asking. We've not had that in Austin County. You're basically saying the attention seekers,
right?
Yeah, no, we've not really had those.
I wondered about that because I know that there are people out there, and you hear stories about it's Christmas time, and the little old lady calls and she says, "Oh, I think I'm having a heart attack," and she comes out dressed in her nicest clothes, carrying a tin of cookies for the firemen because she's so lonely. This is the only way, she has anybody visit. And I didn't know if you had. It sounds strange, but
it's not strange. It happens all the time.
Yeah, people will do things.
Fortunately, we've not had that in Austin County.
Okay,
we've not.
All right, and so that you said.
I was going to say, my next thing I had a question. Okay, so they come out. Then what? What do they go to jail, or do you hand them off to Adult Protective Services, or
again, and I hate to keep using it, but situation dictates response. When the negotiator believes that they've won and this person is going to come out, we will tell them, okay, here's how you're going to exit the house. Here's exactly what you're going to do. Here's what you need to expect. And we will tell them, you will be handcuffed. This is for your protection. So they'll know what to expect when they come out. Now, who do we turn them over to? Again, it really depends on what has happened. If we have somebody that was holed up in their own house wanting to commit suicide, making that statement is not
It's not illegal.
In essence, it's not illegal, so you really have no grounds to arrest them. What we might try to do is potentially contact the district attorney, see if we can get some type of mental health warrant on the person, or file an emergency mental health warrant on them to try to get them some help.
And then, I guess, if somebody is in the hostage situation and they come out and whatever, then is that a thing you call the family and you're like, hey, Bob said he was going to kill himself. You know, we got him out of the house and everything. We've got him down to the police station. We can't, you know, do you want to come get him? Or is that, or I guess what I'm saying is, you know, they talk about wasting resources. If they're just, you know, I want a hug type person, is that considered wasting resources, or is it?
All human life has value.
Absolutely. You're right.
That is the quintessential point of police work. All human life has value. So we really don't see it as wasting resources. If we can help that person, even if it's one person that needs the hug, if we can help that person, then we don't really think it's wasting resources.
Okay. Well, that's the thing.
It's a good question, though. I see where you're going.
Yeah. They'll have people who call in, you know, the swatting and all that stuff, which is not this, but I didn't know if it was. That
is kind of a waste of resources, but we really don't have an option.
Right.
You know, if we get that call and someone says all the right words, HELL is breaking out.
Right.
We have to go.
Yeah.
We have to go.
Okay. And just for you personally, what's the youngest person you've had to talk down?
I'm going to say probably mid-20s.
Okay. Well, that's good to know that there's not a bunch of kids doing this.
No.
Okay.
No, not yet.
No, not yet. Yeah, exactly. That it won't ever happen. But so do you have any other plans to do anything else? Or are you going to be a hostage negotiator and a number negotiator for?
I enjoy what I do for the sheriff's office, both sides of it. I enjoy being a hostage negotiator. I enjoy helping people.
Right.
And for some odd reason, I enjoy numbers. I don't know why. It makes no sense. But so I will probably just continue doing what I'm doing. But I mean, you know, if Sheriff Brandis approaches me and asks me to take on another role, I will certainly do that.
Because you're good that way.
Well.
Yeah. Well, I think I've asked all the questions twice. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything you think people need to know?
No, actually, your questions were really good. A lot of people don't even know how to ask questions about hostage or crisis negotiation because it's kind of an odd concept.
Yeah. So. And like I said, the biggest thing with me was I had no idea we had one.
Yes, we do.
And actually, we have two, correct?
Four altogether.
Four, that's right.
Yep.
So we have four. Good. Well, I guess if I get mad at Greg and I need somebody to come negotiate, I'll know who to call.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, we greatly appreciate you being here, and I hope, you know, that if anything nifty comes up in the future, that you will be more than willing to come back and talk to us.
Absolutely. I had a great time.
Good, because we enjoy having all of our officials and interesting people on our show.
I'm glad to be thought of as interesting.
Well, and you are very interesting. Well, I guess that's it for today. Austin County, we're going to close out this, but I want to remind you, please, to like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel so it gets out there so everybody can see all the good that we're doing. And until next time, keep smiling.